Hey everyone, this is Nitro. In this video, I am going to be covering the other two heroes that are coming with the Record of Lodoss War event, and they are Parn and Pirotess. Now, these two heroes are not heroes that you draw for on a banner, like Deedlit and Ashram. Instead, Parn comes from a Secret Realm event, and Pirotess apparently comes from a login event. So you can get both of them that way. Parn should be able to reach 5 stars just from the event. I'm not quite sure about Pirotess. Okay? And with regards to the heroes, I'm going to cover Parn first and then Pirotess. And as always, I'll talk about the hero's skills and equipment and all that stuff before giving you a sample demonstration video of them being used in combat. So with all that mentioned, let's begin covering Parn. And Parn is part of the Protagonists, Origins of Light, and Heroes of Time and Space factions. So your most common faction buffers for him will really be Matthew, of course, and most likely Yusuke. Right. Other faction buffers, of course, include characters like Juggler, Freya, Angelica, and Joshua. But yeah, I think that pretty much covers all the faction buffs that can affect him. His talent is Knight of Liberty, and it's a very, very interesting one. First of all, after taking damage, he gains the Advance buff, where attack and skill are increased by a certain percentage, 1, 2, or 3%, and this buff also gives him movement +1. This buff lasts 2 turns, and this effect can be stacked up to 2 or 3 times. So because it can be stacked 3 times at 6 stars, it is preferable to have him at 6 stars. Of course, 6 stars gives you more stats in the first place, so you're definitely going to want 6 stars if at all possible. But you do get him at 5 stars, and that is the problem. Okay? Because in order to grind him up to 6 stars, you're going to have to grind 150 shards of this hero. And there's so many other characters that we generally have to grind. That's why I generally can't recommend Parn as a character to use. Despite that, I will say he does seem to be quite a good damage dealer. Okay? For example, at 6 stars, his talent, if you have 3 stacks of it, you're looking at 9% attack increase, 9% skill increase, +3 mobility, and of course, when he has a mobility buff, his damage is also increased by 20%. So he gets enough damage increases to make him a worthwhile damage dealer. In terms of bond requirements, since Parn is a collaboration hero, just getting access to his 2 classes will unlock his bonds. So you go into Hero for the defense bond, and then Strike Master for his attack bond. That's the 4th and 5th bonds for increased attack and so on. His level 70 max stats, there is a typo here. It says Sword Saint and Ashen Hero. Okay. What it should be is the first option is Hero, and the second option is Strike Master. So Hero is his infantry class, and Strike Master would be his cavalry class. And obviously, Hero being infantry class would have more hit points, less attack, and more defense and magic defense. Right? The cavalry class, the main draw of that would be the 5 mobility, as well as the increased attack value. Finally, for soldier bonus or hero boost, the main thing you need to know is the 35% attack increase. Although he does increase hit points by 15%, defense by 30%, and magic defense by 15%. Parn's 2 final classes then are Hero and Strike Master, and generally speaking, my personal opinion is that he should be in the Strike Master class rather than the Hero class. Cavalry for additional mobility to get into range and more attack is probably more important than being in an infantry class character. At least that's my opinion. So, but these are his heart bonds. So, in Hero class, the level 4 bond would be that for every block move before attacking, you take less damage. In the level 7 bond, you get when battling against foes with lower hit points, damage is increased by 10% in battle. And of course, level 10 is always the same, all hero stats increase by 5%. In the Strike Master class, the level 4 bond is that AoE damage is reduced by 10%. The level 7 bond is when unit hit points is below 70%, damage dealt is increased by 10% in battle, And the level 10 bond is that, once again, all hero stats are increased by 5%. Honestly, I don't think any of these really apply. At least it doesn't really matter. So, none of these are particularly significant. At least that's my opinion. The useful skills Parn has are listed below. And the main skill he has, which is very unique, is Glory of Faith. It's an active use skill which restores 50% of his hit points, and he gains the Glory of Faith buff, where for every square move before battle, all stats aside from hit points are increased by 5% for a maximum of 25% stat increase. This lasts one turn. He may act again after the use of this skill, with movement being equivalent to what it was before the use of this skill, and he may only move in a straight line. When using this skill, buff durations will not be reduced. So what this means is when he activates this skill, as long as he moves 5 tiles after activating it, he will get plus 25% attack, defense, magic defense, and all those stats for his attack. This includes skill as well, of course. And because it doesn't affect buff durations, it means any buffs he currently has, like his talent buff, will remain with the same turn limit on them. So it's basically just a skill that allows him to increase all his stats before combat begins, which is amazing. Okay. Because you have to move 5 tiles to get the most bonus out of Glory of Faith, that is why he should be in his Strike Master class. So, next, the other skills that he should be bringing are all attack skills. Okay. So Liberty Slash is his best attack skill that he starts off with, and it allows him to do 1.4 times damage and disable enemy passives before combat begins. Roar needs no introduction, right? You attack a single enemy, dealing 1.3 times damage, and you dispel 2 buffs from the enemy and afflict them with attack and int reduction of 20%. Other than those two, he also has access to Ram, which is a 1-point skill that deals 1.2 times damage and can push a target back 2 blocks, and decrease their mobility and disable guard. Last but not least, he also has access to Rout, which only does 1 times damage, but it does push a target back 2 blocks and renders them unable to act for a turn. So a stunning skill can always potentially be useful, so that's why I have it listed amongst his useful skills. His other skills are all 1-cost skills that are passives that I guess enhance his ability to survive. Like I think one of them has a 30% chance of healing, increased defense or magic defense, that kind of stuff. They're not useful compared to this. So generally speaking, you would pick the first 3 skills, assuming you have the 6 costs, of course. So you would bring Glory of Faith, Liberty Slash, and Roar. If you only have 5 costs, probably replace Roar with Ram, and then Rout would be used in the situations where you know your enemies can be stunned, and that more or less sums up his useful skills. Next up are the soldiers that Parn has access to. So one thing I should mention for this page is that I actually don't have one of his soldiers listed, which is Heavy Cavalry, and the reason I don't have it listed is because Heavy Cavalry are effectively useless. Nobody should be building them or leveling them up to level 10. So these are the other soldiers that he may potentially use. Of these soldiers, I really don't recommend that you level up a soldier specifically for him. You should just use whatever soldiers you have leveled up for Apex Arena. And so of note, for example, Steel Winged Warriors, which a lot of people may level up because of, let's say, Elwyn being able to use them, Lantford being able to use them, and they're just great soldiers that can increase your attack value by 30% when you're attacking. And then Griffin Knights are very similar in that they're also a flyer soldier, and also as long as the soldier's hit points is greater than 80%, once again, attack and defense are increased by 30%. Dragoons are the third option for the Strike Master class, where attack and defense are increased by 30% when you're attacking. Of course, note that Dragoons are weak to Lancer enemies, right? And he is already a Strike Master class, which is Cavalry. If a Cavalry character bringing Cavalry soldiers is generally a bad idea, so I generally recommend Steel Winged Warriors or Griffin Knights for him. And then at the bottom, I have listed his heavy infantry as his other choice. And I just have them listed primarily because if you do choose to use Parn in his hero class, he would want infantry soldiers instead. And that's when heavy infantry would be useful, since when attacking, your attack is increased by 30%. And when you're attacked, your soldier defense is increased by 30%. The other soldiers he has access to are all infantry, which is the Highland Warriors, which you might have leveled up if you used Leonhard, and then Berserkers, which, to be honest, they're kind of like heavy cavalry. I don't see any reason why anyone should have them leveled up. So this is pretty much listed in the order that I recommend you use the soldiers, right? Steelwing Warriors would be his best option. If you don't have them leveled up, but you have Griffin Knights leveled up, let's say because of Luna, then you use those, right? Dragoons would generally require you to level them up yourself, which is kind of awkward. And heavy infantry may potentially be leveled up for you. And if not, you know, Highland Warriors would be the other option if you use Leonhard. With soldiers and skills covered, what's left to talk about is gear and equipment for Parn. So in terms of gear, Parn really doesn't change from any other cavalry character like Leon. You really want preferably Seal Guardians because swords give the most amount of attack value. So Seal Guardian and Frostrend are both great swords that he can use. Armor wise, you know, I have listed Bloodline Magic Armor, Aeolus Battle Armor, and Aeneas Armor. In the helmet section, I have the Vampire Mask, followed by the Fury of Tyr, followed by Aeneas' helmet. And finally, for accessories, I have listed Slayer's Emblem, Judge's Talisman, and Winged Shin Guards. All of these are very viable options. And one thing I really should mention, though, is that for PvE content, ultimately, what gear you bring on your PvE characters truly doesn't matter. It's more a matter of having good enchants with any SSR gear than it is about having the best in slot piece of equipment. Okay, but these combos work out quite well because Hand of Tyr and Vampire Mask will both benefit him because he gets to act again with that unique skill of his. So both of those work quite well because he can get either defense reduction on the enemy or 10% increased damage on himself before combat for at least one attack, right? And yeah, I have listed at the other gear section the Last Knight, and that's because a lot of players have a Last Knight built early on, right? Since you get a Last Knight for free. So, and then in terms of enchant, by far his best one would be Breeze because he needs mobility. So just as an add-on about what I said regarding Parn's gear, for example, my Leon does not run the absolute best in slot pieces of equipment, right? He has a Seal Guardian, Aeneas Armor, which is not best in slot, Winged Shin Guard, which is not really best in slot either. He just has the Seal Guardian and Vampire Mask for being able to Chivalry to debuff the enemy's defense, and Seal Guardian, of course, for maximum attack value. And this is a set of gear which is great for PvE content, right? You can run a very similar set on Parn. You know, it does not have to be the Aeoluses or Bloodline Magic Armors that you would probably prefer to have for PvP, Apex Arena characters, than you would for PvE characters. Right? More importantly than the actual piece of equipment is, as I mentioned, the enchant values, right? For example, Leon here has 11% attack with 18 attack, which is very close to, let's say, 14% attack increase. The Aeneas Armor gives 14% hit points and 1% attack. This hit point increase gives him generally enough hit points to survive, let's say, Anarchy Macho Blast, right? The Vampire Mask has a 4% attack with 7 attack for maximum increased damage. And then the Winged Shin Guards has a plus 10% attack value. So you can see that overall, I almost exclusively focused on increasing attack to the point where I pretty much have around 30% attack increase out of the absolute maximum of 35. You know, the only way I can get higher is if I rolled 5% attack here and then rolled a 15% attack here rather than effectively 14%. And as for Parn's class mastery enchants, it's pretty much identical to Leon because they're both Strike Master characters, right? You're going to want absolute maximum attack if at all possible, right? Aiming for the maximum of plus 80 attack here. And other than that, you know, you're going to want maximum skill for the chance of having a higher chance of doing a crit hit on the enemies. And then you follow that up with the remaining slots, maybe getting defense or maybe even more skill. Up to you on those last two, right? You can see here, I mainly rolled for attack and skill. I didn't even finish trying to get plus 70 or plus 25, sorry, on this particular portion, because with this kind of enchant, it's enough. Yes, I can improve this to plus 25 for 7 more, and I think I can improve this to 15 for 3 more, right? But, and then finally, I think I can get 1 more point here. But 69 is close enough to 80, and you know what? Leon is already one-shotting everything he faces, so I didn't see a need to get that final 11 attack. It's going to use quite a lot of enchant scrolls, attack enchant scrolls, and I don't have them to spare at this time. The final thing to mention about Parn is the materials that you need to do his awakening, and they are listed in this image that you see. So for his first awakening, of course, he needs 5 Splendid Stardust, but he needs Creation Crystals and Sky Crystals. For his second awakening, you're going to need 5 Eternal Moon Splendors, but in addition to that, you're going to need 12 Pure Shining Hearts and 12 Pure Billowing Hearts. So we're going to finally end the coverage on Parn with an example of Parn in battle, which is in his first 3C fight. So since this battle has Parn with only 5 points, not 6 points, he is going to be bringing Glory of Faith, Liberty Slash, and Ram, which is a 1-point skill, right? So let's just begin and get started. So this is a Parn with the Steel Winged Warriors as soldiers, and he uses Liberty Slash to easily one-shot Deedlit to start. Next is Pirotess, and very easily Parn can charge up, use the Ram attack, and also one-shot Pirotess without any issue. So then it's just a one-on-one against Ashram. So since Parn is temporarily silenced, he just initially moves back, and we saw there that he just activated the Breeze enchant for extra mobility. Right? So he now actually has a ridiculous amount of mobility. In fact, if you take a look, it's around 9 mobility right now, right? Because he has 2 of those buffs from his talent, which increases his mobility to 7, and then Breeze to increase his mobility to 9. So what he's going to do with Parn is move back a few tiles. Right? If we pause right here, we can see 1, 2, 3 to the tile he's on, then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, I miscounted. 8 mobility. Regardless, 8 or 9 mobility is still crazy, and what Parn is going to do here is activate his Glory of Faith skill, act again to move up, and then launch his Liberty Slash attack to one-shot Ashram. So remember, Glory of Faith does give him increased stats for each tile he moves, right? So he was getting 20 or 25% attack increase, 20-25% defense increase, and all the other stats were increased by that amount. So that's why Parn was able to easily one-shot Ashram with that final attack. And of course, Liberty Slash adds another 1.4 times damage too. Right? So there you go. An example of Parn being a DPS character and just one-shotting target after target. So the fourth and final character of the Record of Lodoss War collaboration is Pirotess. And really, the main reason to use her would be her amazing assets. Actually, I just recently noticed that all the waifus are in a bedroom, and all the male characters are in a meeting room. It's kind of crazy. Like, really, long games? But seriously, in Langrisser Mobile, Pirotess is the Dark Elf waifu character, and she is really not just, she's not a great character for Langrisser Mobile, okay? She is part of the Meteor, Dark, and Space and Time factions, and her talent is Dark Elf of the Empire. When units' life is less than 100%, attack and skill is increased by 10, 15, 20, 25, or 30%. And before battle, if skill is greater than the enemy, you inflict 1 random debuff. So the first part of the talent, the fact that you have to be below 100% hit points, already makes it incredibly hard to use. So without this talent effect, she's not doing maximum damage in the first place, so that's why she's not top tier at all. Okay. Her soldier boost is 30% attack. That's really all you need to know. So it's less than the maximum 40%, although it's still a pretty solid soldier boost. And in terms of soldiers that she can bring, well, it's primarily the Dark Elf Snipers, the Hellfire Archers, and I suppose, Shinobi as well, and Mist Dancers. So most commonly, I believe it's used for the Dark Elf Snipers, but once again, keep in mind that she has to be damaged to get the damage boost, so it's just awkward that way. And finally, in terms of skills that she has, if you're going to actually use her, the main reason to use her is really the fact that she can also be another attack command character. So she can attack enemies, but she can also provide attack command to allies, right? Just like Matthew, just like Angelina, now, Pirotess can also do the same thing. And finally, the other part of her is that she does have a mobility increasing skill. So Sidestep allows her to increase her skill by 30%, which lasts 2 turns. And after use, she may move another 2 blocks to attack. And then you would combo Sidestep with one of the Ignore Guard skills that she has, which would be either Plunder or Riposte. And then finally, you would likely choose to bring Sly Stride so that she can retreat 3 tiles after she assassinates a character. Once again, however, overall, I don't consider her a top tier character. It's just too difficult to maintain her damage increasing buff, and without any kind of damage increasing buff, you're going to struggle to assassinate characters in general, right? With the Ignore Guard skills. But in a nutshell, that is what she is. An assassin who can ignore guard, who can bring attack command, who can... and that's mainly it. So if you are going to use Pirotess, she really shouldn't have her own set of gear. Instead, simply steal the set of gear from, let's say, your other assassins like Zerida, because you're not going to use 2 assassins in the same battle, and you can easily have a fully upgraded set of gear that way. Now, for a battle example of Pirotess in action, we're going to refer once again to a 3C battle example, because she's just not used by anyone in Apex Arena. And for this particular example, you'll see that she is bringing attack command, Sly Stride, and Smoke. Now, Smoke could have very easily been replaced with an attack skill instead, but even then, I think she will very much struggle to one-shot anyone, because keep in mind that Pirotess is severely lacking in attack value, since her talent doesn't provide any increased damage as long as she's at full hit points. So let's just begin, and the first opponent she faces off against is Ashram. So Ashram charges south initially, and then Pirotess does a ranged attack on Ashram, basically wiping out all of his soldiers, but Ashram himself survives. Next, Ashram attacks. Keep in mind, by moving up, he gets a bit of increased defense. So with that, Pirotess doesn't do enough damage to kill off Ashram in melee combat. Pretty sure this Pirotess has an extreme magic bow. Okay. So that's 2 fights. Ashram's still alive. And then with the third attack from Pirotess, Ashram finally falls. And then of course, he heals up to full health, and because of Sly Stride, gets to shift around a little bit. So next, there's a few turns of waiting for Deedlit to come south, and it's now turn 6. And Pirotess doesn't have the ability to get into range to attack Deedlit. So as a result, you have no choice but to have Pirotess stand on a city wall. So Pirotess stands on the city wall tile, waiting for Deedlit to attack first, which just happens here, and they basically trade damage, right? Range attack against range attack. So with that done, right, what happens here is Pirotess tries to melee attack the ranged attack Deedlit, but Deedlit herself hits so hard that Pirotess dies. So instead, if you do a range attack from the wall, only those Crystal Warlocks gets to fight. So, and then with the fixed damage from the Hellfire Archers, it makes it so that when Pirotess melee attacks you, if you have the Extreme Magic Bow, she kills herself. And then once again, there's a few more turns of waiting for the final opponent, which is Parn, to charge down to the south. So this is probably the easiest part of the fight, where Pirotess gets to attack Parn once at range, wiping out all of his soldiers. Parn then gets to act, and he moves into melee combat range, and the Extreme Magic Bow allows you to do enough damage that Parn dies before he even gets to attack you, ending the fight. So this concludes my coverage of the 4 new heroes which will be coming with the Record of Lodoss War collaboration. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you found this video useful to you. And on that note, Nitro out.